going to continue on with part 9, and this would be subpart F of the FDA final rule. And just as a side note, I'd just like to tell you, as far as consumer do-it-yourself, that is not regulated by the FDA. So you're okay to do your DIY, your do-it-yourself e-liquids, as long as you don't sell that to anyone, sell that as far as a point of sale. That is, as long as you don't profit from it. But if you do it yourself, just for yourself, for your own vaping needs or wants or desires or whatever have you, that is not regulated by the FDA. All right, so on to the FDA final rule. 29069 states, FDA is not aware of any currently marketed tobacco product that does not contain nicotine. Products made or derived from tobacco could contain other additive chemicals like ANABASINE or NORNICOTINE and are dangerous intoxicants and can be psychologically addictive. Now, there is a process of doing that, and that is called certification. And I believe I spoke about that in the Part 6 FDA electronic submissions, as well as in Part 8 the FDA draft guidances. In order to sell 0 mg nicotine, you don't have to go through the PMTA or the substantial equivalence process or the pre-market tobacco application process, which is the PMTA, of course. You don't have to go through that, but you have to go through a certification process, which isn't very tedious and complex and everything. But you have to certify that the product that you have. Well, this is my own do-it-yourself, by the way. Let me just grab a e-liquid bottle. That this product here, which is 3 mgs, but if it's 0 mgs, you have to show that through your certification process that there's absolutely no nicotine in this bottle, even though it said 0 mg. And how they say that is it's all about these derivatives, and there's a testing that you have to go through in order to certify your e-liquid as 0 mg, but it's not such a complex process. So anyway, so yes, 0 mg nicotine level still has to go through the FDA. 29074, the final rule will have a significant economic impact on a substantial number of small entities or businesses. And well, that's a given. And FDA pretty much knows that's going to happen, especially if the Cole-Bishop Amendment doesn't go into place, which we keep all products manufactured before August 8th, 2016. Now, when I say manufactured, that's the manufacture date of the finished product. It doesn't even mean that it's, let's say Eton manufactures a finished product on August 7th of 2016. That can still remain on the market, because regardless if it goes into the stores or not, regardless if it's ready to be sold or not, regardless if it's shipped out or not from Eton, it's the manufacturing date that of the finished product. That's when that manufacturer date. That's how it is. What's the word for it? how it complies. I guess you could say how it complies to the FDA final rule. So it has to be the manufactured finished product date. So therefore, that particular product on August 7th, 2016, as a finished product ready for sale to the general public, can remain on the market before August 8th, 2016. As far as the Cole-Bishop Amendment is concerned, and then as far as if that doesn't become law, which I'm pretty sure it will, but if it doesn't, then let's say that Eton product that wound up on the market sometime after August 7th, 2016, if that is not approved by through the PMTA process with the FDA, then on May 11th, 2016, after the 36 months, then it will need to be taken off the market. Unless Eton gets their product approved before the 2 years is up, and that is May 10th of 2018, or if they submit an application, let's say it's received, not just submitted, but it needs to be received by the FDA. Let's say it's received April 2nd, 2018, but the FDA has yet to approve it. It can remain into the marketplace for up to an extra year outside of May 10th, 2018. And then if FDA does not approve of it, and I spoke about this earlier, another another subpart of the FDA final rule, then it needs to be taken off the market, or else it will be seized, regardless if you submitted it, regardless if the FDA has received it or it's pending review. If it hasn't been approved after those 36 months or after that extra year after May 10th of 2018, it still needs to come off the market. Unless, I don't know, in the year 2020, they finally approve of that particular Eton product, then Eton can put that product back onto the marketplace. Then in 29074, final rule adjusted for inflation is $144 million in the year of fiscal year of 2014. So what that basically means is, well, I don't really know why they put that in there, to tell the truth. Final rule adjusted for inflation is $144 million. No idea why they put that in there, and that's how that one line reads in there. Actually, let me bring that up so I know exactly the contents of that particular, what that means. Just 1 second here. Give me take a vape, sit back a moment. Let me pull this up on PDF. $29 074. All right, there you go. Let me find what the context of that particular line. Okay, so this is on 29074, and it's talking about, it's under 18 subsection analysis of impacts, and they're speaking in terms of the executive order 12866 and 13563, which I had spoke about in part 5, the FDA executive orders. I spoke about those particular executive orders. And what it's speaking about is the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act of 1995 requires us to prepare a written statement which includes an assessment of anticipated costs and benefits before issuing any rule that includes any federal mandate that may result in the expenditure by state, local, and tribal governments in the aggregate or by the private sector of $100 million or more adjusted annually for inflation in any 1 year. The current threshold after adjustment for inflation is 144 million using the most current, which is 2014 implicit price deflator for the gross domestic product. So what they're saying is it's that one word in there that they used. It's in the expenditure, federal mandate that may result in the expenditure by state, local, and tribal governments. Requires us to prepare a written statement which includes an assessment of anticipated costs and benefits. Okay, so the assessment is $144 million according to 2014, so I'm sure it's about probably $180 million right now, or $170 million. I don't know why I really put that in there, but I did. Anyway, 29074, the FD&C Act requirements that will apply to newly deemed products include establishment, registration, and product listing, ingredient listing, submissions prior to the introduction of new products, and labeling requirements. Free samples of newly deemed products will also be prohibited. The additional provisions of this final rule include minimum age identification requirements, vending machine restrictions, and required warning statements for packages and advertisements. I just want to sort of make a note of that for my epilogue. 1 second. All right. So that's pretty much like a summary of the entire FDA final rule. So I'll go over each one. As far as establishment registration and product listing, that has to be completed by December 31st, 2016 by vape shops. They have to list every single product that's in their vape shop and submit that to the FDA, and that actually has to be submitted, I believe it's once or twice per year. I believe it's once a year. They have to annually submit that. They also have to submit an ingredient listing of all their e-liquids. Submissions prior to introduction of new products. So they have to, after August 8th, 2016, any new products that are going to come onto the market, they have to submit the PMTA applications to the FDA, and then they have up to 3 years to be approved. And then labeling requirements, like certain warning statements on their bottles. Or like on here, this font size is extremely small. All that stuff here that talks about warnings and stuff like that will have to be a minimum of 12 point font size. So they have to make this much larger than that. Of course, free samples after August 8th, 2016 is prohibited. And then, of course, they talk about minimum age, which is 18. And that will also kick into place on August 8th, 2016. Identification requirements, I spoke about that just a moment ago. And regarding if you're between 18 and 26, they are required, vape shops, online, wherever you go to get your products, they're required to have a photo identification for you in face-to-face or even online if they could do that, but they're not really required to do that as long as they have certain software that's approved by the FDA to identify whoever the consumer is. But the identification requirements For 18 to 26, you must be ID'd, and from 26 and over, you don't have to be ID'd. So just make sure that person is over 26, or you're going to be in serious trouble. Then vending machine restrictions. Vending machines with vapor products could only be in an adult facility, and required warning statements for packages and advertisements. So on your billboards, on your advertisements, on your windows at your vape shop or whatever have you, they must have all warning statements there on any product that you're advertising, as well as on on a package. Like if this well, not only on the label here, like I just spoke about, but let's say if this e-liquid came inside of a box, on the outside of the box, you'll also have to have those warning requirements on there as well. Try to knock out a few more here. Let me just make a note real quick of something here. 74, okay. And also 29074 under the final rule include ends, including e-cigarettes. These products further include e-liquids, atomizers, batteries, cartomizers, atomizer plus replaceable fluid-filled cartridges, tank systems, flavors-free e-liquid, vials that contain e-liquids, and programmable software. Well, okay, I'm going to stop on that. So all those things, and the ends is, of course, the electronic nicotine delivery systems. Under the final rule, you must have submissions to the FDA regarding everything that I just stated in the PMTA process, or even the substantial equivalence process, if you can possibly do that. The only way really to do that is if the Cole-Bishop Amendment is enacted into law. Then you could say that something on the market that looks like this before August 8th, 2016, because all those products before August 8th, 2016 remain on the market. They don't have to go through the PMTA process or the substantial equivalence process because of the Cole-Bishop Amendment. If it becomes law, pretty sure it will. And then all you have to do after August 8th, 2016 is say your product looks like something like this, something like this, something like the drip tip or whatever. And then it'll be less costly to go through that substantial equivalence process or application process, and less complex as far as paperwork is concerned. And 29074, a tobacco product means any product made or derived from tobacco that is intended for human consumption, including any component, part, or accessory of a tobacco product, except for raw materials other than tobacco used in manufacturing a component, part, or accessory of a tobacco product. And 2, does not mean, and what the heck did I write there? I can't even read my own writing here. Sorry about that. And does not mean that it is a drug. Oh, okay. It does not mean an article that is a drug. So, what they're saying about as far as except for raw materials other than tobacco used in manufacturing, when they manufacture tobacco plants, they might add a lot of chemicals to it, especially for the analog cigarette, but that's not regulated by this particular FDA final rule. So, like this FDA final rule also covers premium cigars, roll your own tobacco, smokeless tobacco, though it sort of has its own regulatory scheme actually, and there's one other, and cigarillos. So all those particular types of cigars fall also under the FDA final rule. And when you process a cigar, and I used to smoke Ashton cigars all the time. That was one of my outside of my Marlboro menthol box shorts, I would have some Ashton cigars. I loved them. Ashton cigars coming out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I just love those cigars. And anyway, in the process of making that cigar, they add chemicals in the process of manufacturing that particular tobacco leaf. And that's what they're talking about. And so those raw materials are not regulated by the FDA final rule. But they can regulate any product made or derived from tobacco, which is especially the nicotine, is the main point of the FDA final rule. And then does not mean an article that is a drug, because that would fall under the regulatory powers of the drug department within the FDA. So you can't say that this e-liquid is therapeutic or less risk or healthier for you than analog cigarettes, because therefore you're stating that it's more of a therapeutic drug for like cessation, like a CSSATION, and therefore you fall under the Food, Drug, and Administration. You fall under the drug aspect of it, and you don't no longer fall under the Tobacco Control Act of 2009. So that's that. 29075, the final deeming action is, now this is very, very important, and I speak about this in parts 5 and 6. So in part 5, FDA executive orders, and part 6, FDA electronic submissions, especially in the electronic submissions area. I speak about this a lot. Anyway, 29075, the final deeming action is an enabling regulation, which means it enables the regulatory agencies to create the regulations required to administer and enforce them. And there's just a few federal agencies within the federal government that has that power. And that is, not only can they administer the law, that is, create law, like the FDA final rule, because it's actually part of the Federal Register, and that is all statute, or code, or law, or whatever you want to call it. They call it a rule, but it's really a statute. This is actual law. This is an actual, even though it says it's a rule, this actually, once it's in the Federal Register, which was published in there on May 10th, 2016, it automatically becomes federal statute. And having that enabling regulation, they're able to enforce it as well within the FDA. They will have their own agents, their own investigators. They may have maybe the FBI help them out, the ATF help them out, because ATF is Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They do a lot of raids, a lot of federal raids on companies and things of that nature. And so they'll probably have the ATF come into play. And there's other groups that also within other agencies within the federal government, that if the FDA says, well, this particular vape shop is going to be raided next week, well, certain forces within the federal government will come together and through the liaison of the commissioner, which is Mitch Zeller of the FDA, and they will literally raid the shop and shut it down, or at least seize all the products. They can criminally prosecute. This is the type of powers that the FDA actually has. They can criminally prosecute. They can. You could wind up with civil penalties from $15,000 to $10 million. They can seize your products, and they can also put an injunction. So let's say they seize all your products, but then you put more e-liquid or whatever, a vaping product or whatever, back on the shelves. They will put an injunction via a court for you never to be able to sell that particular product again. So that's what the enabling regulation, that power is very extreme power for a federal agency to have. And unfortunately, in our case, the FDA has that power. So not only do they administer the law or implement the law or institute the law, but they also enforce it as well. Very serious. And that's in 29075. Also, 29075, the primary estimate for the present value of total quantified costs over 20 years is approximately $988 million at a 3% discount rate. So I actually did that when I did the Part 2 FDA contracts. I actually speak about that as well. But they project out to 20 years, and they figure, as far as estimates are concerned, the present value of total quantified costs of the entire situation that's going to go down in the next 20 years. It's going to cost upwards of approximately $988 million. It's a serious lot of money. And out of that, of course, they don't tell you that in the FDA final rule, but out of that $988 million, it's taxed. And the federal government makes a lot of money in taxes off that $988 million. 29078, agency lacks the authority to change the grandfather date. And when I read that, I was like, I laughed. Because they have the power, especially because of the enabling regulation, to, and as well as the regulatory powers, that they're, the other regulatory powers that they have, that they can interpret the Tobacco Control Act of 2009 pretty much however they liked, and they have throughout the entire FDA final rule. They even state it themselves. I spoke about that in another part. I can't remember. I think it could have been Subpart A or B or somewhere in there of this Part 9 FDA final rule uploads. That they can interpret the Tobacco Control Act of 2009. They could deem anything they like, right? They have the enabling powers to actually enforce, to administer law, but they can't change the grandfather date of February 15, 2007, which is really a bull-faced lie. I mean, they can do that if they wanted to, but they don't. Because if they changed that, what would be the point of the PMTA process? What would be the point of the substantial equivalence process? See, so in order to have all that in place, they must have, for many years before that process, before August 8th, 2016, they must have that all those years to be able to get all those products, and those products need to go through the PMTA or the SE process, unless, of course, the Cole-Bishop Amendment is enacted into law. So it sort of gives them a head start by saying, well, we can't change the February 15th, 2007 grandfather date or predicate date. We can't change that, but we can change everything else. We can interpret everything else. We can pretty much change the wording or deem whatever we like according to the Tobacco Control Act of 2009, but we can't change the grandfather date. And I think that's just a bunch of bull crap. There's no excuse for that. But in order to have all those complicated application processes in place, they have to have that grandfather clause in there. Understand? I mean, it's just logical. If you understand the logic that the FDA is using, I completely 100% disagree with that logic, but it's really a scheme is what it is. It's a scheme, it's a trick, it's crafty. And in order for those application processes to work, and then for the FDA to contract with labs and for organizations and research labs and institutions and everything, and I explain all of that in Part 2 of the FDA contracts. In order to have all that in place, and even for these research labs to actually make profits, and for the big revolving door to go continuously around in a vicious circle, and in terms of making money for not only the federal government, but making money for research labs and organizations and institutions and associations and all that other stuff, they cannot change that grandfather clause. That's the reason why they do it. They do it, well, to be quite honest and to be quite blunt, they do it for money. That's the reason why they didn't change the grandfather clause. Because of money. All right. So anyway, let's go to the next one. And that is 29078. FDA estimates the average number of vape shops that meet the definition of a manufacturer are 4,250. FDA also estimates that there will be 186 other manufacturers and 14 importers of ENDS products. So that's just their estimates of, as of 2016, that there are 4,250 vape shops, 186 manufacturers, and 14 importers. I don't know where they get those statistics at, but that's their statistics. And that's what you need to take as fact. It might not be fact, but according to the FDA final rule, which is federal statute, it's fact. 29078, a PMTA, an average of 1,500 hours to complete. FDA believes an SE submission will take considerably less time and money. So, and I get into that momentarily as far as all those hours, what they really add up to. It's more than 1,500 hours, but that's the average. And they say it right there in 29078 that the SE, substantial equivalence process, application process, will be considerably less money and less time to go through. That's why we need to get that Cole-Bishop Amendment in place, because all the products before August 8th of 2016 remain on the market, and then any products that come after August 8th, 2016, all you have to say is, well, this Kapar Mini 60 watt and this Kangaroo Subtank Mini tank is on the market before August 8th, 2016, and then whatever product you create or manufacture into an actual finished product, and then it has its own date after August 8th, 2016, you can say it looks similar, and it'll be a lot easier to get through the substantial equivalence process. Like it says, considerably less time and money than the pre-market tobacco application process. That's why people don't realize why the Cole-Bishop Amendment is extremely important. Extremely. I can't express that enough. Either people get it or they don't. They really. That's all it is. They either get it or they don't. 29080. Considerable uncertainty remains as to the number of domestic non-retail manufacturers. And what that means is like maybe little tiny vape shops that are like a mom and pop that are working out of their basement or that are working out of their garage, and they're selling e-liquids as maybe a side business or whatever. They have no idea what the number of that is. I'm sure it goes on, because what the FDA wants is they want these little mom and pop shops from a garage or a basement or out of a camper or whatever have you, out of a tent even, or yard sales or whatever, that are selling the e-liquid or whatever it may be, to register by December 31st, 2016. Or else they will actually come after these mom and pop persons that are making e-liquid in a garage or in a basement or in a camper or in a tent or wherever. If the FDA finds you doing that and you're not registered you don't register your products, you will be penalized and they will seize your products. 29080. Once the continued compliance period ends past 36 months, FDA intends to actively monitor. What did I write there? And to actively monitor and enforce the pre-market authorization requirements regarding products on the market without authorization, even if the respective submission is still under review. Now, I spoke about that earlier too. So let's say you submitted, let's say for this e-liquid here, it's by Lightning Vapes Raspberry Rain 3 mg. So everything on this bottle and the e-liquid itself, this bottle is submitted to the FDA for approval, and they submitted, let's say they submitted in April of 2018, and then as long as the FDA receives the product and all the paperwork and all the monies were paid for the testing of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then the FDA will give Lightning Vapes an extra year past that May 10th of 2018 up until May 10th of 2019. But let's say they still haven't approved this particular product on by May 10th of 2019. Then, if it's not approved by that date on May 10th, 2019, they have to literally take this product, or any product for that matter, off the shelves until it's approved. And if it's not approved by the FDA, then they can, and like it says, it's actively FDA intends to actively monitor and enforce the pre-market authorization requirements regarding products on the market without authorization past that 36 months. So they will seize the product, they'll have civil penalties, maybe even criminally prosecute, could be Lightning Vapes or anything. I'm not picking on them. I really love their e-juice, by the way. Great juice, by the way. But I'm not picking on them as an example. I mean, in real terms, Lightning Vapes actually exist. You're not talking about some generalized product out there. No, these are an actual company that can literally be criminally prosecuted. They can be have civil penalties. They can have all their products seized, and then they can have an injunction against any other products that they may try to put back on the shelves to sell or sell online or whatever have you. And until that product or products are approved by the FDA. And I'm sure if they enforce it, let's say they take enforcement measures against Lightning Vapes after May 10th of 2019, I'm sure they're never going to want to approve this product because they'll be in court, they'll have a bad name, actually the FDA will destroy Lightning Vapes or any company for that matter. 29080, submit health documents by February 8th, 2017. That is manufacturers. So what they have to do, let me bring that up so I put that in context of what I was talking about and what I wrote down there. Let me just put this in better context of what it's saying. Submit health documents. Okay. That's 280. One second here. I always like to put in, most of the time when I write down, 99% of it I write down, I understand the context of what I wrote down. But if I don't understand the context, then I have to refer to the FDA final rule to understand the context of that line. So I don't want to mislead you at all. So let me try to find this particular thing about submit health documents. Take a vape, take a second to relax here. One second. Submit health documents. They're still dealing with all the comments in this section as well, and then they respond accordingly. Okay, here you go. So, the compliance period for manufacturers of products currently on the market to submit health documents is 6 months after the effective date of the final rule, which brings it up to February 8th, 2017. Manufacturers of products entering the market after the effective date of the final rule must comply within 90 days before delivery of the product for introduction into interstate commerce. With this final rule, FDA also is announcing that it will extend the compliance period for an additional 6 months from the effective date to allow small-scale tobacco product manufacturers time to organize, compile, and digitize documents. So as far as the health documents are concerned, one second here, let me. So it's like a general statement as far as the health documents are concerned, but I'm sure what the health documents are, it's about the warning labels on here, like to make sure that because you have to have certain required warning labels or health warning labels is what they're speaking about. So you have to have those documents submitted by February 8th, 2017. Those health documents must be submitted by them as far as warning requirements. 29080, manufacturers of products entering the market after the effective date, August 8th, 2016, of the final rule, must comply within 90 days before delivery of the product for introduction into interstate commerce. FDA also is announcing that it will extend the compliance period for an additional 6 months from the effective date to allow small-scale tobacco product manufacturers time to organize, compile, and digitize documents, and that would be up to February 8th, 2017. So they give them a little grace period, not very much, but manufacturers of products must have it's called staggered time frames. So there's certain times during the year, or I should say certain times during the next 3 years, that either manufacturers or e-liquid manufacturers or vape shops or whatever have you has to comply certain times during the year. And I actually speak about that in the in Part 8 FDA draft guidances. So there's staggered time frames for every little thing that the FDA final rule speaks to. So, but they're giving them some time. They're giving them up to February 8th of 2017 to organize, compile, and digitize these documents, which includes those health documents as well. 29080, when an e-liquid manufacturer adds or removes ingredients from a product, it becomes a new tobacco product. So let's say this is 3 mgs, and they've never had a 1 point, perfect example, Lightning Vapes has 0 mg, 3 mg, and 6 mg. After August 8th, 2016, if they make an e-liquid with 1.5 mg nicotine, that the entire thing, the entire product, becomes an entirely new tobacco product, which means it needs to go through the PMTA process as a separate application. In fact, it would be 0 mg, 1.5 mg, 3 mg, and 6 mg. That is 4 applications through the PMTA process. Each application costs, with the testing and everything, not the application itself, but all the testing that you have to submit to the FDA, it's up to $599,000 for the year 2016. And every year thereafter it goes up. And 600,000, that's $2.4 million just to do the nicotine levels of this e-liquid. That does not include the labeling requirements, does not include the VG, the PG, the flavorings. Just because it says raspberry rain. I believe it was like a cream and a raspberry or something like that. When they mix their e-liquids, they don't just put raspberry and cream in the e-liquid. They might have up to 10, 15 different types of flavors. You bring out different tones and undertones through that e-liquid. And each flavor is a separate PMTA application. So if you have 10 or 15 flavors in that juice, that's 10 to 15 separate individual PMTA applications. So this e-liquid bottle can wind up costing you upwards of like $20 million for one single solitary 30 ml bottle of e-liquid. Up to $20 million. That's why not many, unless that Cole Bishop Amendment goes into place, not many e-liquid manufacturers will be in business after May 10th of 2019. Or even, I should even say May 10th of 2018, because I don't even think they'll be able to submit an application to the FDA. So they really, if they submit an application to the FDA and it's still pending for review and hasn't been approved, then they have up till May 10th of 2019. But if they don't submit an application, probably they won't, because they can't afford all the testing and research that I speak about in Part 8 FDA draft guidances, as well as Part 6 FDA electronic submissions. They can't afford that process of testing whatever product they have, that they really only have up to until May 10th of 2018. They only have 2 years. So, scary stuff. I'll take a little drink of milk here. So, on to the next thing here. Don't have to do this here. Alright, so as far as FDA man hours are concerned, and I'm sure the FDA is going to hire additional workers or employees to do a full, and this is the FDA, not the manufacturer, but this is the FDA, when they collectively do all of the submissions that are, or the applications that are submitted to the FDA, and it falls under the full substantial equivalence application process, it will take 158,149 hours for the FDA to process those applications. And for the ingredient listings, which like vape shops will have to submit these ingredient listings by December 31st, 2016, it will take 121,604 hours of FDA, they call them burden hours, and I'll get to that in a moment, but it will take 121,604 hours for the FDA to process those applications, or those registrations, I should say. They're not so much applications, they're registrations. Over 100,000 hours. And you add that up. You know how many more workers the FDA is going to hire? They actually even talk about that in one of the FDA draft guidances, that they'll have to hire more people in order to fulfill all these hours. So therefore the federal government gets more bloated, gets more bureaucracy, more red tape. It's just insane, which goes against the which I spoke about in the Part 5 FDA executive orders, as well as Part 4 of the Administrative Procedures Act, as well as Part 7, the Tobacco Control Act of 2009, when they talk about things need to be streamlined and the benefits must justify the costs. And yet the FDA goes against all that. But guess what? They can't change the grandfather date. So anyway, on to the next stuff here. Okay, let me just mark that out there. And I did that. Okay. 1 second. All right. Just my little shorthand that I do. Brings back memories. Never mind. Anyway, the next thing is 29082. Persons engaged in the manufacture, preparation, compounding, or processing of a tobacco product or tobacco products must register their establishments and submit a list of all tobacco products being manufactured, prepared, compounded, or processed by that person for commercial distribution at the time of registration. Every person who owns or operates any establishment in any state register with FDA the name, places of business, all establishments owned or operated by that person, along with certain accompanying consumer information and other labeling for such products, and a representative sampling of advertisements, each tobacco product by brand and by quantity, in each brand and sub-brand, submission of information whenever additives or their quantities are changed. All that information has to be submitted by December 31st, 2016 by all these vape shops. Whew. A lot of them are going to start packing up, I'm telling you. You know, it's funny, I just ordered something from 88E Vape. Last week, I ordered an RDA, and they always, whenever they would get my order, they would fulfill it within 24 hours, mail it out to me, and I get it within 3-4 days. Last week, I ordered an RDA, a Bale version 2, and I emailed them. I get no response. It's been over a week since last Friday. Today is Friday. Over a week. It's still in the processing stage. I get no response in my email. So I sent an email to them and said, well, with shipping, it was on sale for $4.99. And so with shipping and the product cost was $7.98. So I said, I wrote an email to 88E Vape, and I said, just take the $7.98 as charity, and I'm never going to order from you again. And I've been with 88E Vape for over a year. But all of a sudden, I get this kind of response, and I wonder if maybe they're going out of business. I mean, they deducted the $7.98 from my bank account with no problem. They had no problem taking my money. But for $7.98, I'm not going to do anything to them. I won't do anything with the BBB or any. I won't make a big deal out of it. But I just won't order anything from them again. But I wonder if they're going out of business or something. There could be, could very well be. It's a vendor online, 88E Vape, EVAPE, 80, the number 88EVAPE. And I've done a lot of hardware reviews of their products that were sold to me. But this last week was kind of weird. No response, no nothing. So my advice is don't go there and shop, because not so much that the products are bad. The products are very good, but they probably will take your money and just leave your product status in processing and won't ship your item out to you. So to be on the safe side, my advice is don't order anything from 88E Vape. Anyway, back to this. So, yeah, all this information I just read has to be submitted by December 31st, 2016 by these vape shops. And then at the bottom it says, submission of information whenever additives or their quantities are changed. So, let's say a vape shop submits the registration to the FDA, but then they get a new e-liquid on the shelves. Well, then they have to take that new e-liquid or new product or whatever have you, though there won't be probably any new products after August 8th, 2016. But if maybe they bought a manufactured finished product that was on the market before August 8th, 2016, they decided to, maybe they never carried the Tesla Invader 3 or whatever, 240 watt. So they decided to carry that. Well, when they carry that, they have to go through all that information I just read off in 29082 and supply that information to the FDA. So submission of information whenever additives or their quantities are changed. If they get more, let's say they have 10 items, they decide to buy 2 more items, they have to submit another registration to the FDA to tell the FDA that they just purchased 2 more items. Absolutely ridiculous. As for such mind-boggling insanity in this FDA final rule, it's absolutely insane. Even the state governments don't expect you to do that. Like if you have 10 products and then you buy 2 more to sell, even the state governments don't do that. Even local governments don't do that. The FDA is just completely... there's no words to describe it, and I don't want to curse on this channel. So then 29084, FDA estimates that the majority of the 4,250 vape shops that qualify as manufacturers will only register and list in the first 2 years after the rule becomes effective. So according to the FDA, they expect them to register every year with the FDA, and then after May 10th of 2018, they will pretty much stop registering. So the majority of vape shops that qualify will only, and the operative word in that is only, will only register and list in the first 2 years after the rule becomes effective. Only register, and what that means is a lot of vape shops are going out of business, and the FDA is quite aware of that. As far as the manufacturers themselves, or e-liquid manufacturers or software manufacturers, to go through the full substantial equivalence process, the application process, will take 300 hours. And to bundle everything together, if you're like, instead of just submitting maybe this particular tank, instead you bundle it all together like a, what is that thing, Indoor T18 or something like that. Some products are all together as one whole packaged. It's I don't have any of those devices, but if it's all together and there's nothing that can be taken apart, you have to vape the entire piece together, then they call it a bundled substantial equivalence, and that will only take 90 hours. And then same characteristic substantial equivalence, that is, if you can prove that a product after August 8th, 2016 was, and I'm speaking in terms that the Cole-Bishop Amendment is not in the picture, you have to show that in the substantial equivalence that this product looks like something that existed before February 15th, 2007, which is impossible to do, and that will only be 47 hours. But they know no one will be able to go through that, because even if they spend money on that, or they spend 47 hours on that, they submit the application to the FDA. They just wasted a whole bunch of money, because what really matters is the approval of the FDA. So you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to do all your testing and lab results and everything, submit all that information to the FDA only to have the FDA deny it. And then in 29084, under the Internal Revenue Code, may require a permit as a manufacturer of tobacco products. Now that's up to the Internal Revenue Code to decide, but they may actually require a permit. So a manufacturer has to get a permit to manufacture tobacco products in order to comply with the Internal Revenue Code. But that's the Internal Revenue Service that will have to decide all that. So they may require that as well. 29084, twice yearly confirmation of, okay, so it is twice a year. I thought it was once a year, but I stand corrected. 29084, twice yearly confirmation of annual registration and product listing update. So twice a year, the vape shops have to submit registration and product listing updates 2 times a year to the FDA. I was saying once a year. At first I said once or maybe twice a year, and then I said it was once a year. But it is twice a year they have to do that. 29085, FDA assumes that very few manufacturers or importers or agents thereof would have health documents to submit. Now, once again, that's come up, and I want to make sure that I'm reading that within context of what that means. So let me just put this up. Let me, 1 second here. Because I don't want to, Final rule, health documents. Let's see what this says here. One second. Doesn't even say really anything about health documents. 1 second here. Let me just look at that rule real quick and see what exactly the context of that is, because I don't want to speak to that unless I understand it completely. All right. 1 second. All right, so exemptions. Shores, FDA shores. 1 second here. I just want to make sure I have this right within the context of what they mean by health documents. It's got to be in here somewhere. 29085. 85. So that's that, and that's that. Okay, here you go. Okay. So the health document is, of course, regards not only e-cigarettes, but also involves cigars, pipe, water pipe, tobacco, and all of that. But that doesn't really concern me there. God, it's got to be in here, right on this page somewhere. One second. Give me 30 seconds here. I should have this. Explanation in detail. The why. Public health. Oh, I see what the context of these health documents is related to the public health. So, like it says not 29085. FDA assumes that very few manufacturers or importers or agents thereof would have health documents to submit. And what that means is, and it's very true, I certainly understand that. I actually speak about that in the Part 6 FDA electronic submissions, as well as in Part 8 FDA draft guidances. What that means is you have to show, and I talk about this in those two parts there, it's called environmental assessment impacts. And what that is, oh man, this is very difficult. And the FDA knows they can't, it's impossible that really you can submit these particular health documents. But you have to show, I don't want to make this too long. I'm going to end on this point, and then I will do the next subpart. But let's say you live in Montana as opposed to California. And I use this example, this scenario in those two parts of the this project here. But anyway, let's say a person lives in Montana and another person lives in California. And California air or oxygen levels in California are probably not as clean as the air or the oxygen in Montana. So when you vape on this product, how does that vape affect the general population within the context of the oxygen or air of in California, as opposed to the oxygen or air levels or chemicals or in the air or whatever that are in Montana? Then you have to show the difference between the Montana as well as California. You have to show the differences, and not just those two states, by the way. They talk about general population. And this mainly comes out of Part 6 FDA electronic submissions. I mainly go into it in that particular part, Part 6. And that is, it's not just two states you have to do. You have to do the entire general population, from Washington State all the way down to Florida, from Maine all the way to Arizona. And you have to show how it affects population assessment impact. In other words, how does this vaping, when I vape on this, how does that vapor affect the general population? And then you have to submit those health documents to the FDA, which, like they say, they know it. They know it already. All right? The FDA assumes that very few manufacturers or importers or agents thereof would have health documents to submit. It's impossible to do that. Those types of environmental impact assessments, it's impossible to do that. It's just, I mean, just, I don't even know if Big Tobacco can even submit those types of applications to the FDA, because it's just really unheard of. And that's the reason why these hurdles that the e-cigarette industry has to go over in order to be approved by the FDA is so insurmountable. I know I just pronounced that wrong. INSOUMOUNTABLE. Some words I just can't do. I'm sorry about that. I'm terrible at that. I get tongue-tied. But they're so grand, these hurdles, that no one can ever get past these hurdles that the FDA has put up. There's no way you can do those kinds of environmental impact assessments. It's I mean, you could do it, maybe. I'm sure the government does that all the time to show, like the EPA. But the EPA has like $100 billion of tax-paying money to do these studies. You understand? An e-liquid manufacturer or a hardware or software manufacturer does not have $100 billion laying around to do these studies. So anyway, I think on that point, I will end this particular subpart, and then I will come back. Just want to look at one other thing on here. Something caught my eye, and 1 second here. Take a vape for a moment. Okay, here it goes right here. So also it says FDA estimates that a tobacco health document submission for cigars, pipe, and water pipe tobacco, other tobacco importers, and importers of ends required by Section 904A4 of the FD&C Act will take approximately 50 hours per submission based on the existing collection that applies to tobacco products currently subject to FD&C Act and FDA experience. To derive the number of respondents for this provision, FDA assumes that very few manufacturers or importers or agents thereof would have health documents to submit. Therefore, the agency estimates that approximately 6 submissions, 2 for cigar manufacturers, 1 for pipe and water pipe tobacco manufacturers, 1 for other tobacco product manufacturers, and 1 for tobacco importers, and 1 for importers of ends who are considered manufacturers, will be submitted on an annual basis. FDA estimates the total number of hours is 1,200 hours, 6 submissions multiplied 4 times per year, multiplied by 50 average burden hours. No one's going to be able to ever be able to do it. In fact, like it says, only one importer of ENDS product, that is electronic nicotine delivery systems, will be able to complete this health document. Only one. Only one. Only one. Anyway, I'm going to end this subpart and I'll come back and do another subpart. Bye.